I saw this headline today, Monday, November 25th, that yesterday the DOJ filed a statement of interest regarding the settlement from the Sitzer-Burnett lawsuit, the lawsuit that started it all, that created these new rules for realtors about no compensation in the MLS, about using a buyer representation agreement. And there was a video I watched on YouTube by someone named Tristan Amwada, and he was nice enough to post a copy of this. He linked to a copy of this statement of interest in the description. Now, rather than talk about the general implications, because it's fairly toothless until they do something later, and they're waiting to see, I guess, November 26th is when all this is finalized. But there's something that stands out that's quite bothersome. And I'm looking at this highlighted text because I want to draw your attention to what they're saying here. So they're taking issue, basically. And you can watch Tristan's video, or you can read through it yourself and see everything they say. I'm not going to do it. That's kind of lengthy and boring. But I will say that this ties into another issue, and that is my last video I posted that in California, the Department of Real Estate just sent out an alert, an advisory to licensees about the potential for buyers to walk away from their buyer's agent if the cost is too great to bear. Cost of the buyer's agent commission, to be specific. So I'm looking at this and how the DOJ the federal government may get involved in this NAR settlement between private parties. And they say this: in addition to the new provision that requires buyers and brokers to make written agreements before home tours, may harm buyers and limit how brokers compete for clients. It bears a close resemblance to prior restrictions among competitors that courts have found to violate antitrust laws in other proceedings and could limit rather than enhance competition for buyers among buyer brokers. They're basically taking issue with the fact that there's a requirement for realtors to have a buyer representation agreement. Here's the problem, though. So realtors, this whole lawsuit settlement pertains to realtors, not independent agents, not real estate licensees that aren't realtors. So as I skimmed through this, I'm looking at the verbiage, and there's no distinction made that we're talking about members of a trade organization called realtors. It even says here that requires buyers and brokers. Now, this doesn't, but there are state laws that do, because January 1 of 2025, the state of California requires, per the new assembly bill, that any real estate licensee has a buyer representation agreement signed by their buyer as soon as practicable. And I know that some people have tried to bend what as soon as practicable means and say that, oh, it's only when you're going to write an offer, not when you're doing showings. And I'm thinking, well, that's not practicable. I mean, if you're spending days or weeks working with someone, do you not have an opportunity to get a buyer representation agreement signed? So what's interesting is the DOJ, from my limited understanding, is taking issue with the fact that some brokers may require their buyers to sign a representation agreement, and that may harm buyers or limit how brokers compete with buyers. Okay, so they take issue with that. The problem I have with this is, I mean, they're welcome to take issue with this. The problem I have is there's no distinction made. This is not about agents, independent agents. This is about realtors, and they're not saying, and broker members of the real estate association or realtor brokers or something to that effect. There's no distinction made. They're just singling out brokers in general. Now, this is better aimed at state laws. I mean, someone left a comment on Tristan's video that Indiana just passed a law in 2024 that they're requiring a buyer representation agreement prior to showing a property to a prospective buyer. California, I would argue it's clearly practicable to have your representation agreement signed before showing a property. So this seems almost like a mismatch. Now, this is toothless because it's just this notice of interest, and I don't know all this legal stuff. I'm not an attorney. I don't know what the long-term implications will be. I guess we'll see. But I do know that the inferences made here are more applicable to these states. Hey, DOJ, why aren't you targeting the state of California? Because they took this matter, which is just pertains to members of a realtor association, and they made it statewide law for all real estate licensees, not just realtors. Because if you have a problem with the NAR settlement, well, you can sidestep it. Consumers can just hire a non-realtor licensee to represent them. Non-realtors aren't bound by those rules. So anything in this NAR settlement doesn't have to affect consumers. They can choose to work with whomever they want, realtor or non-realtor. But that changes when you get in these states like California that are now making it a law requiring all licensees to effectively mirror the NAR settlement by having a representation agreement in place. Now, there's one other point I want to touch on. This person makes a comment in here. This person declares that they're an attorney, and they go on to say that there's no reason to have an agreement before showing a property. You just need a written agreement before submitting an offer, which I completely disagree with. It's not like how it used to be, where you go on the MLS and you see all the commission offered for every home that's for sale. There's no written commission being offered anywhere except for on a representation agreement. Why would you go to work for someone without discussing you being compensated or how you're going to be compensated? Even more, how much you're being compensated, because this all has to be negotiated. So are you going to go out and spend all this time and do all this work and then at the last minute spring it on your client and say, by the way, this is how much I want to be paid. We're going to write it right here, and expect your client to just say, okay, no problem. I was expecting that and I have no issue with whatever number you write there. It doesn't work that way. That needs to be discussed prior to you investing the resources of going out and conducting business with the anticipation of possibly getting a commission when a transaction closes. There's no guarantee. You're investing resources, you're working on spec, and you're investing those resources with the anticipation, the hope of getting paid. And at the same time, the buyer is engaging you to work on their behalf for a fee. What is that fee? How much is it? Why on earth would you wait until they find the home that they want and then you become the bad guy and you become this gatekeeper? Hey, this home that you fell in love with today, the one that I showed you, well, when you write the offer, we're going to write in that I want a seller concession to cover your bill to pay me 2.5%. And if you don't like that, if you have a problem with that, tough luck. And guess what? The buyer can walk away. That's what the whole DRE advisory was about. If a buyer finds the cost of engaging your services to be too great, which is highly subjective, okay, the buyer's already coughing up this monumental amount of money to facilitate the purchase in the first place. It wouldn't be hard for them to look at you as this villain, this gatekeeper that's standing in between them and the home that they love because you sprung on the last minute that you want tens of thousands in commission. So it's just bad business to wait until the emotional moment after days, weeks, or even possibly months of working together. It's insane that someone would actually think that it's a good idea to just spring it on the buyer in the end, that you may need to pay a commission and it may be tens of thousands of dollars, because buyers can walk away. They can cut you out. They can go right to the listing agent if you don't have anything signed and say, this person that pretended to be my friend and drove me around for 3 weeks and showed properties to me, well, now they're trying to shake me down after I fell in love with this home. All I want is the home. And they know that it's so hard for me to muster the money together to purchase this home. Can you please help me, Mr. and Mrs. Listing Agent? And the listing agent's going to say, sure, here's a discount. I'll write the offer for you. And you just got cut out and the listing agent's acting as a dual agent. That can and will happen. So something to keep our eyes on, because with all these different forces coming in and levying their opinions on everyone, and then it spreading from just affecting realtors to all licensees through state bureaucracies being lobbied by realtor associations, well, this is creating all sorts of conflicting issues and leaving it more unsettling for agents. So the takeaway is, it's California state law beginning January 1st to have a representation agreement. You should be doing that now, even if you're not a realtor. And that representation agreement should be done at the outset, at the beginning, before you spend time, energy, resources, everything that goes into facilitating showings, setting appointments, taking your client out, running comps, sitting down, doing paperwork, drafting offers. Before you invest that work and before your client, your buyer relies on you to be the professional, they need to understand what their cost is. It's only fair to both parties. And if you don't discuss that up front, if that's not handled at the outset in writing, that's very likely going to lead to hurt feelings, ruined relationships, attacks on your reputation, villainization, and ultimately going to push a buyer to cut you out and go into the arms of the listing agent, which they'll legitimately be able to do. We've been warned through the Department of Real Estate. So have your buyer representation agreement filled out at the outset. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching.